Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much, being able to share here, being able to park right outside the door. Uh, Somebody was asking me, I wasn't late for church. I stayed here last night to make sure I wouldn't be late for church. But we are so grateful to be here. You guys have been a great encouragement to us, and we are so thankful for over 28 years of ministry. And just to give you a little bit of background, Jane and I met in high school in Greeley, Colorado, and we both got our pilot's licenses when we were in high school. And I was telling somebody earlier, it is considered a legal addiction, aviation, but I'm not willing to go through the 12-step program to cure myself of that. But anyway, and then as said in the video there, with the experience we've had both in aviation and in ministry, we want to be able to pass that on to the next generation in aviation. So our verse that we have lived by since we went into missions, like I say, over 28 years ago, is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And every day the Lord is giving us hope and a future, and it's so exciting to see how He has used us. And we're going to share a little
One thing I want to add.
PowerPoint. Go ahead, Jane.
One thing I want to add to that is Jeremiah 12. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And I just want to emphasize how much prayer has been a part of our journey, but how much we depend on prayer from churches like you. And thank you for that prayer.
Yeah, when people ask us about going into missions, we tell them the same thing that our pastor in Greeley told us. The first thing you need to do is get a prayer team and have that prayer team praying with you at least monthly as you search how God is going to be using you in the mission field. Now, the mission field might be whatever your job is, or if you end up going different places serving the Lord, you are on the mission field when you walk out of the door here. And want to make that clear, and we're not special. We just got a special opportunity that the Lord gave us. And what a joy it's been. So we want to go through our journey to missions or through missions. And the big thing,
You have the clicker in your pocket?
oh, I do have it. Yeah, yeah.
Just a thought.
I told you, yeah. She doesn't have to tell me all of this stuff when I'm flying, but when I'm speaking, yeah. So that's why she had to be a pilot too. I told her wouldn't marry her until she was a pilot, and she said that's not true. And I said, were you a pilot when we got married? And
That's true.
so anyway, I have to turn this thing on. I think that's on. And do I need to point it anywhere? Oh, forward, I bet. That's us 50 years and 6 months ago. We've been married for 50 years, and it has been a great adventure that the Lord's given us together. One of the things I want to mention, I don't know why the Lord puts things on your heart, but I guess He does. I did not become a Christian till I was 38. Now, I was active in the church and was doing things and all that, but had never had a personal relationship with the Lord till I was 38. Guess when we went into missions? I was 39. Okay. When God finally gets a hold of you, He does amazing things. And so, anyway, one of our first experiences in missions was to go to Romania on a short-term trip as sponsors, and took our whole family with us to see how they would adapt to the mission field. The interesting thing is when I ended up looking at missions, or Jane and I started, and that's the other thing, it has to be a calling on both of you, and especially if you're going to go to a hard place like Alaska. We've seen missionaries come where the guy is so excited, the last frontier, the hunting, the fishing, and all that, and the dutiful wife followed him along, but wasn't called to serve there. And winters in Alaska can be hard.
The dark winters are hard on especially women. The isolation, the lack of fellowship becomes something that's really hard on the wives and the children.
Yeah, And because you're in the mission field, you're going to villages that are not Christian villages, and you might be the only Christian influence there. Anyway, we went on this short-term missions trip to Romania to see how we would handle that, and that seemed to go well and way better for the kids than what we thought. We had our one son was terrified he was going to starve to death in Romania. Why was he going to starve to death?
I don't know.
Because he was afraid of the food there. So we took 4 jars of Skippy peanut butter, figuring we can find bread. Okay, we'll be able to find bread in Romania. Now, where is that son today?
He is out in a village. Did I turn that thing? He's out in a village in Alaska as a church planting missionary. Been in that village for 11 years, married with 7 kids, and absolutely loves. His home is Nulato, Alaska.
Yes.
And I bet he's still eating peanut butter.
Yeah. But those were the things that, made a huge impact on us, is seeing how our family adapted to going to missions. So this is our first prayer card, and this was actually at the Greeley Airport. This used to be an airplane that I had an air charter service with out of Greeley. When we got our call to missions, and my boss had actually owned the airplane, he said, "You must have really had a bad dream." And we were with a mission organization out of Longmont, Colorado, going to Yakut, Russia, in Siberia, and that was in '95. And it was interesting because we went on a survey trip to Russia to see how we were going to serve the missionaries there. And we were going to take an airplane over there and fly them out to the remote parts of Siberia, show them how we could get them there quicker, they'd be able to share the gospel, be able to go back more often, and all these sorts of things. Well, on our way to Siberia, we flew on Alaska Airlines. There was a team of 4 guys that went, and we went through Anchorage, and from Anchorage, we were supposed to meet this guy in the parking garage of the Anchorage Airport. And he gives us 3 boxes of cassette tapes. And then he gives us $150,000 cash. If nothing looks like a drug deal, I don't know. And so we divided that cash up amongst all the guys going, and we said, "Do we tell the Russians we're bringing this money?" "Oh, yeah. They don't care if you bring it in. They love to see the money come in. Don't try to take it back out." And it was money for the missionaries that were in Russia. So he says, when you get to Russia, and this is back in '95, he says, you will meet a guy in Khabarovsk who's going to find you a place to stay while you're there, and you give him all the money in the cassette tapes. The cassette tapes were sermons in the Russian language that we were taking over for them to share. And the guy we met in '95 was Dwayne King. And Dwayne King had been in Russia for 5 years already, and he was with Send International, and he was going to bring aviation to Russia also to do ministry. Fact is, he did one of the first mission flights from Nome across to Providencia, Russia, back when the wall came down and we could actually fly into Russia.
And he led the air traffic controller from Russia to the Lord
Yeah,
that day.
and you don't touch the button. You just push it so it stays green and leave it on.
Oh, won't stay on
Won't stay on?
unless I push it.
Okay, now just, anyway, so he led the air traffic controller to the Lord, because the air traffic controller comes to me, "You teach me American aviation language," because the international language for aviation is English. But this was one of the first English-speaking pilots that had ever flown into Providencia. But anyway, all that to say, I met Dwayne in Khabarovsk, and I said, "Dwayne, you've been trying to bring airplanes to Russia for over 5 years now, and they still won't let you bring a plane in." He got a Russian pilot's license. He got a Russian maintenance license. He says, "They're not letting you come. What, are we foolish to think we can do it when you haven't been able to?" And the answer stuck with me so much. He said, "God hasn't done this through me, but I have no idea how God will work through you." And I thought, oh, okay. So then we went on up to Yakutsk, visit with the missionaries, and asked them, "How far do you want to travel?" This was Yakutsk here. And I said, "How far out do you want to travel from this city of Yakutsk?" And they said, "Well, our farthest village takes us 2.5 to 3 days to get there by car, and some days we have to turn around because the roads are so bad we have to come back. And I said, well, I figured it out. And I says, I can get you there in about 2 hours with the airplane we're planning to bring. How often will you use us? Oh, they kind of looked down and they said, it would have to be a matter of life and death before we would ever use you. Okay, 3 days compared to 2 hours. What am I missing here? And they said, you don't understand. And again, this was back in the mid-90s. They said, in Russia, the only airplanes that are here belong to the government. It doesn't matter what name you paint on the side. When we go into a village in an airplane, the people will assume we're from the government, and they're terrified of the government. So they said, we lose all our credibility if we use your airplane. And the other thing is, we lose our 2 to 3 day discipling time with our Russian counterparts that go with us, and we don't want to lose that. So long and short of it, we were all dressed up to go to Russia and no place to go. So we ended up at Prairie Bible College up in Three Hills, Alberta. I ended up being the director of the flight training program. I was thinking I was going there to get Bible school. I took 1 class in 3 years.
I took 3.
Yeah, Jane took 3, and the one I took, I failed. I didn't think they would fail an administrator, but they will.
Well, that's because he was never there. You have to show up at class in order to.
Well, I was out getting students. When we
He
first
was
went
out
there,
marketing the program.
we had 7 students in the program. When we got there the fall after we had left, we had 42 students in the program. So it wasn't that I was just sleeping, okay? But this kind of gives you an idea. I mean, this is the only difference. We didn't get quite as much wind as you guys get here, but we were flight training. I did some flight training, especially flights that went to the U.S., and Jane loved it there because it snowed.
Tell him about the cat.
Oh, yeah. The guy that owned the airplane that I showed at the beginning, he also was a big dairy farmer in the Greeley area, and he also had dairies in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and all over the place. And anyway, when I wasn't flying the airplane for him or doing charter flights, he had me as a relief feed truck driver on one of the dairies, and I'm feeding cows at 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and I'm bemoaning the fact because we want to go into missions, and here I am sitting on this cat loader, a 966 cat loader, loading the feed truck, then taking it to the cows, and I'm really groaning, okay? And anyway, so finally we get into going to Prairie Bible College. It'll be a ministry on our stepping stones to overseas missions, and we got our first snowstorm at the hangar there. That's a hangar in the background, and so I'm the director of the program, and the new director is the old director is long gone, and I say to the staff, I says, now how do we clear this snow out? Because just like around here, once a storm comes through, it's great flying weather. I said, how do we get the taxiway clear to get to the runway? Because the city cleared the runway, but not our taxiway. And they kind of hung their head and said, well, the last director knew how to run a Cat 966 loader, and the school would let him bring it out to clear the runway or clear the taxiway. I'm sorry, Lord. I should not have been complaining. I needed to know how to run a 966 Cat loader. And we always share this with the mission students on their way, is that every experience God gives you, He is going to use down the road. Now, some of them you say, Lord, I really don't want to use this down the road later. But it's a training ground all the way along. And part of the thing is that we ended up doing mission trips from Prairie Bible College. We went down to the Hopi Indian Reservation, did flight training for missionaries down there, teaching them how to fly. And also our kids got to participate, and Jane helping in work projects there, and I'm doing all the talking. Okay. And then we ended up going, it's interesting, this story. You tell about going to Uganda and how the process went.
We're sitting at Prairie Bible College, and someone comes into Jerry's office and actually was looking for a pilot for Alaska. And I would have loved to have gone to Alaska. He describes this whole thing, and it was dog sleds and winter, and I just thought it sounded wonderful. But The day before he came in and talked about Alaska, we had an interview with MAF Europe to go to Mongolia. So they were starting a new program in Mongolia. They were looking for a program manager. So they came to us at Prairie, interviewed us. We had told them, Jerry had trouble learning Russian when we thought we were going to Yakutia. And we told them that. And so they said, you know, we don't think you're a good candidate to go to Mongolia. For the biggest reason was the Russian.
Language, because the Russian, or the Mongolian government required pilots, if you're staying in country, to speak Mongolian, even though the international language is English, not if it's in their country.
So they said, but would you consider going to Uganda? We both looked at each other and said, where is Uganda?
No idea.
Never even heard of it. So the Lord took us from Mongolia, and I had done a homeschool study with the boys on Genghis Khan and Mongolia. We knew all about the country. We knew nothing about Uganda. So the Lord changed us, and we went to Uganda.
Yep. And that was a great experience. We went there with the intentions of being there 20 years. We even took our dogs with us, because that was the one thing that our boys are really going to miss, was our, and the director for MAF said, well, take your dogs. You should have a dog anyway for security on your compound, and that'll make your boys not miss home so much.
One of the things I want to point out about this MAF Europe staff on these stairs is the staff that we had there. We had Ugandan staff, and then we had international staff there. And the biggest reason they wanted Jerry to go there was to take the people that were there and make them a team, because there was no team in it. Everyone kind of did their own thing, and there was no unity.
There's a Bible verse that goes about that. You know, everybody did what's right in their own eyes.
So it took a year, the first year we were there, but this group of people became family, and it was wonderful to see how God did that.
The interesting thing is the team building that worked the best was playing ping pong and volleyball.
And shooting rubber bands.
And well, yeah, I had rubber band wars in the office. And I had an office manager, Hadija. I don't know if we could pick her out in the picture, but she was a very prim and proper person. And she just couldn't believe the program manager was shooting rubber bands all over the office at other people in the office. And then the Ugandan staff started shooting back, and how dare you shoot at the boss? We had a ball.
Hadija did enter in at the
Finally,
end.
yes.
It took her a while, but she did.
Parting shot, I guess.
It probably. Anyway, it was hard to leave there.
Yeah. We were only 8 miles from the equator there. I loved it there.
There was no snow, though.
There was no. The difference between the longest and shortest day in Uganda was about 14 minutes. In Alaska, the difference between the longest and shortest day is 14 hours. Big difference. And it was not too hot and not too cold. I told everybody, this is like living in Camelot. Our flights left at 8 in the morning. They got back before 2 in the afternoon because at 3 o'clock the thunderstorms came in. And it was just, you could almost set your watches by it. And typical Ugandan village, and you want to share a little bit about?
It's interesting. The bottom picture there is a church at a Ugandan village. And you can see our boys there, and Jerry and I. But when you go into a Ugandan church that's a village church, or even in Kampala, it happened. When we went to a church there, a native church there. Because of our white skin, we have to be up front, and they expect you to preach. Jerry has a saying, he says, I'm a pilot, not a preacher. So a lot of times he would just get up and tell our story, tell how God's worked in our lives. But it puts you, at least for us, it was very uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, because you're put on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And that's hard to
When we would
deal
be
with.
shopping downtown, we would get in a line, to go into a store. And because you're white, they part and you move to the front of the line. It was like reverse prejudice. And my son John, used to argue with him and say, no, no, I'll stay back here. He caused more trouble by arguing than if we just went to the front and went in.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was something to get used to.
Well, we thought we were going to be in Africa for 20 years. When we took the position there, I was going to be a flying program manager, so I'd also get to do some flying, because as I shared at the very beginning, I do love to fly. And they changed the rules, and I couldn't fly for MAF in Africa. So because of that, and we checked, we were actually missionaries with the Baptist General Conference on loan to MAF. We went back to them and said, you know, this is what was supposed to happen. And we spent a week in the Chicago area at their head office praying and talking and counseling about it. And they said, it's clear that you are called to do flying as your ministry. And so we ended up.
The other thing they said was, it was clear to them, which I don't think it was clear to us. We felt leaving Africa early was a failure. They said, you were brought here as an interim pastor. You brought the team together. You made the changes that they wanted you to make. Interim pastors don't stay usually. So you need to now let someone else come in, and you need to leave. And that helped us tremendously deal with the change that God was making it, we weren't. And that made a huge difference.
Yeah. And so
One thing I want to point out.
Go ahead.
Go back one. See our prayer card? Every time we went somewhere, we lost a boy. We started with 4 boys, and our prayer card just kept getting less and less boys. So anyway, pretty soon
They're
it's
still
ju-
all alive, though.
Pretty soon it's just
We did
us.
not sacrifice, you know, of course, I always tell everybody, Isaac, we know that his son was not a teenager, because then it would not have been a sacrifice, so. Anyway,
Go ahead.
so our first year from when we left Africa to coming to Alaska, we actually spent at Alaska Bible College getting a Bible certificate. And that was one of the things I wanted to bring out, is you can serve the Lord without having a Bible certificate or all this theological training. God can use you with what you've got because He's given it to you, okay? And so you don't, but anyway, Interact said we needed to have at least 30 hours of Bible, so we got a 1-year Bible certificate. And that was a perfect balance of leaving from where I was in charge, and it was a lot of stress. And having that year of just being in God's Word, spending the time at Alaska Bible College, me having to get used to snow and Jane loving snow. And
Which
so,
cross-country skiing, I fell and broke my tailbone. However, I still love it.
oh, and there's our 2 dogs that we took to Africa and then brought back from Africa. So
We did graduate.
we got our Bible. Now, Jane was so upset about losing kids everywhere we went. This was our next prayer card.
This is when we started getting grandkids. So I put him on our prayer card.
So, anyway, and just, do you want to give them a brief where all the kids are now?
Sure. In the top left is Jeff, Joy, and Elizabeth, and now Abby has joined the family. Elizabeth that's there is a freshman at Biola right now this year. Jeff is a high school principal in Greeley, Colorado, and Joy is a curriculum director for English in that same school. Abby is a junior in high school.
Yep.
So that's Jeff, and they're in, Greeley, Colorado. Next one would be Justin, Becky, Sarah, and Christy. Justin was a sheriff in Lake City, Colorado, for years. He also was part of a camp there called Camp Red Cloud. Both Justin and Becky served there for several years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Sarah and Christy were, their girls are now, Sarah is married and lives in Pagosa Springs, and Christy is at Emmaus Bible College for her 2nd year for a degree in missions. The tragedy is that family had an avalanche destroy their house. And Becky made some changes, walking away from the Lord, right before the avalanche hit, and in the tragedy of all that, they lost everything in the avalanche, but the miracle of it is Justin, Sarah, and Christy were in the house at the time, and they all survived. Justin was on top, but the girls had to get dug out. And they all survived with minimal injuries. But they did end up in a divorce. Justin then couldn't stand the winds coming off a mountain and snow. He couldn't live there anymore. So he moved to Traverse City, Michigan, right at COVID.
Yeah, right when COVID started, he got to the worst state in the world to be, Michigan, during COVID. And,
But tell him about his flight training.
but he was able to continue doing flight training because aviation was not restricted with COVID. You could continue to run flight school. So he went and got all his ratings. He came to Alaska. I got him his flight instructor rating, and now he's a flight instructor full-time for the college there in Traverse City, Michigan.
And then he married a wonderful girl named Jamie, who had 2 boys of her own from a previous marriage, and they're doing beautifully. God has just restored his heart, which is neat to see. Anyway, John and Mariana are the ones that live in Alaska. John, they have 7 kids now, those are the twins, Andrew and Renee. Andrew and Renee are at Frontier School of the Bible for their first year and loving it. John and Mariana have been in Nulato for 11 years.
11 years, yeah.
Now, and that is their home. They love it out there. And then James in this was single, but he's married to a girl from Palmer, Alaska. They live in Wellington, New Zealand, and he's a flight paramedic there. They love New Zealand. They have 2 kids, and that's our family.
Yeah. So our ministry with Interact Ministries in Alaska, I was their pilot, and there are just some shots of flying out to the villages, what the runways look like in the winter. I noticed Jane favors all the winter pictures.
There is summer in Alaska.
Yeah.
And he does fly then.
So,
There
and then
you
in the
go.
summertime, I was also in charge of mowing the yard and upkeep, and then Jane, they had a big hospitality ministry for Jane, have a facility in Palmer, Alaska that would hold, about 40-some people.
Yep.
And so it was a busy place and a busy time. But then we were 5 years, they decided to sell the airplane. And when the airplane's gone, I thought I was going to go back into commercial aviation and just fly commercially in Alaska till I talked to the people at Send International. And the people at Send said, oh, don't go to commercial. We've just got a new airplane, and if you would fly that for us, we would love to have you on board as our chief pilot, because they actually, by the time we left, had 5 airplanes, and there was 14 pilots sent north in Alaska. And I did a lot of flying into Canada along with Alaska with Send North.
Northern Canada.
Yeah, northern Canada. I've flown off the northern coast of Canada, a place called Cambridge Bay and Joe Haven, which are islands off the northern
Up the
coast
Arctic
of Canada.
Circle above.
I thought remote in Alaska was remote, and it's nothing till you start flying in northern Canada. You leave out of Yellowknife heading north. There's one diamond mine with an airstrip at about 40 minutes flying time. Next 3 hours, there's no sign of anything man-made, let alone a runway or anything like that. So it's a different flying. And but then we were based out of Lake Hood next to Anchorage International. In the foreground there, that's the Lake Hood seaplane base. That's the busiest float plane base in the world. It's froze 5 months of the year. So when it's thawed out, it's a busy place. And anyway, and that was the airplane that drew me in to fly for Send North on the left. And that's a typical winter shot. You've got to take your hanger with you. You have wing covers, engine blanket, you got covers for the propeller and the spinner, and then a lot of times you got to carry a generator with you so you can plug the airplane in so it'll start in the morning. Wintertime flying in Alaska is a lot of work. Now, Jane, you go ahead and
And
share.
then this is the house that we had,
That we just sold.
that we just sold 2 years ago,
Yeah.
18 months, anyway. Anyway, this is the house we had in Anchorage. We had a huge ministry to the missionaries that came in from the villages. They would come in and stay with us while they did shopping and doctors or just a time to rest. We had a fenced-in backyard which is huge for kids that come in from the village, because they're not very good about crossing streets or looking for cars or, the busyness.
Plus, it
So-
was a place that parents could feel safe letting
Right.
the kids play and have time.
But we had, typically, we had people in our home, probably, I'd say, 4 to 5 days every week, year-round. At Christmas time, we would have people come in and just stay for 2 weeks with us. So it was a very busy place, but a beautiful place, and we built relationships with not only the mission that we were part of, but missions all over Alaska, which is something God is now using with Kingdom AmeriCorps.
Yeah, and the thing that we're trying to pass on to the next generation of missionary pilots is you don't just fly the airplane. You are actually end up being a member care person to the people that you're flying, or when you go out to the village, you're the common denominator on the airplane. And those missionaries are starved for Christian fellowship. And so we're trying to train that into the pilots with Kingdom AmeriCorps. And that's why we're saying preparing them for the real world. And was there one other?
There should be another one.
Should be a rainbow one.
Yeah. Oh, this is.
Oh, lessons learned. Oh, here's when these are two really good things. Folks that are in a perspectives class, it's called Perspective on World Missions. Used to be Caleb Project. I can't remember what organization. And we took that thing 3 times. It was so good on seeing what's needed in the world, how can you fit into it and all that. And the other one, anybody done that Experiencing God Bible study? That's one that is really good because it talks
Henry
about...
Blackaby.
Yeah, it's by Henry Blackaby. I know he's Canadian, but it'll be the 51st state, so don't sweat it. Anyway, and we got to travel through Canada. I'm a little concerned about that because in a month we're going to be driving through Canada, so you can pray for that. But anyway, it's talking about God is at work around you. That includes here in Mullen. And all you got to do is see where he's at work and join him in that work. You don't have to go to Uganda. You don't have to go to all these different places because God is at work around you. And that Bible study is so good at pointing that out. And so we wanted to, whoops,
You missed one.
I missed one. Did I get it? No. Okay. And this, again, training the missionary pilots and people that are looking at missions. We thought Africa for 20 years. We were there for 2. And then we went from Africa to Alaska. And then we needed that year of transition at Alaska Bible College. The one thing that we were told in mission orientation is you may miss some key family events. And you just have to be ready for that when you're going overseas. God didn't have that happen for us. We've made every one of our kids' weddings. We've made the funerals because God had us there at the time.
And we were there for Jerry's mom to take care of her right before she died. Also for my dad, also all 4 of them.
Yeah.
We were there as they were.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing is the value of the short-term mission trips. It's just so awesome to be able to go and see and find out how you fit in. The one thing that I just want to caution on short-term mission trips is when you go, and especially in Alaska with the native kids, don't tell them you're going to stay in contact with them unless you really are going to. The other thing is we get really excited when we have repeat mission groups come in. They develop a rhythm, they develop relationships. The native kids, you come back. We run, Kingdom AmeriCorps runs a Bible camp, part of their training up north of the Arctic Circle called Brooks Range Bible Camp. And that has such a profound effect on a lot of our students. Even though they're no longer flight instructing with us, they come back and go work at the camp because they've developed relationships. They do a weekly Bible study online with those kids every Sunday afternoon, and they come back.
Through the winter.
Yeah, through the winter.
Through the winter.
And that's huge in developing ministry and leading people to Christ. So I think we're almost, And then we talked earlier about the value of the prayer team and how valuable prayer is in our ministry. And
We developed by our pastor's advice, we developed a group of 6 people in the very beginning that were part of our prayer team. 4 of them are now with the Lord. The other 2, we still go back to frequently and ask for prayer. They counsel us. They've seen us through the whole journey. They know us well. But that prayer team is vital.
yeah, and one of the things we're training the students is to value your support team with prayer emails, newsletters, supporter thank you notes, once a year, some kind of small gift, just to remind, and then encourage your supporters to come visit you in the field to get a feel and a taste of where you're at. And then the home service visits like we're doing now, it's just so valuable to keep that contact. I think, in a way, we're a testimony for how well Jane has done the communications, because we've actually been with 5 different mission organizations, and we've had all the supporters follow us. Now, there's 2 ways you can look at it. I tell people, they just pay me to stay away, okay? And so, as long as we'll keep you in the missions, you won't be around. But actually, it's how God has blessed us, but blessed me with a partner in Jane that keeps such good communication and spending the time. We enjoy home service, and it recharges us to share what God's doing through us with other people, and hopefully enticing other people to come into the ministry. So, and whatever you do, whether in word, deed, do it all to the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. And this is Kingdom Air Corps. That's actually a road that goes across the middle of our runway. And that's very typical in mission flying. You've got to watch for the cars. You've got to watch for the moose. You've got to watch for the kids. You have to watch for the four-wheelers. You've got to watch for the snow machines. And so we're training in a place that gives students a really good taste of missionary flying. So thank you so much. We appreciate having the chance to share. And given so much time, we feel really blessed. Yeah. And we want to thank you for that. So.